Well, good morning, everyone. This morning, we are talking about the topic of the world in the Bible. The theme I have for October and November is "This world is not our home." That's my kind of theme for this month and next month. And so this morning, I kind of wanted to talk about what is the world when we come to the Bible. You know, when we use the word world, we could be talking about like several different things, right? The world could refer to, sometimes in the Bible it refers to like a period of time, right? Sometimes, a lot of the times when we say the world, a lot of times we think about the earth, right? We think about all creation, or we might even be thinking about the people on the earth. But you wouldn't think a simple word like just the world would be used in so many various ways. But there's one specific way in which the word world is used in the Bible that I want to look at this morning. And I think a really good place to start is James 4. Now the major text I'm going to use this morning is 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 to 17. But I want to start right here in James 4:4. James says, "You adulterous people." Well, what a start to that verse. "Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God." Yeah, you know, this is quite a verse, isn't it? First off, he's like, "You adulterous people." It's like, well, hello, James, how are you? What a way to start a conversation, you know? But you know, he's talking about friendship with the world or friendship with God. I mean, what's God saying here? Is God saying, well, what does it mean to not be a friend of the world? Is he saying, oh, you don't have any friends at all? Is he saying you're not a friend with the earth? Probably not, right? Is he saying that you should never leave your home? Is he saying that we should just go up into a mountain in a monastery and just be secluded? No. The word world here is very unique, right? It's not unique to the Bible, actually, but it's in the New Testament, they love to use this word world in a negative sense very often. The word isn't speaking about like the whole world, the earth, Mercury, Mars, the sun. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about like the earth itself, the ground, the land. That's not what we're talking about. Are we talking about all people? Not even that. But God is saying through James here, he's saying the disciples of Christ must separate themselves from this mainstream culture of sin in humanity. You know, I've always been curious about scuba diving. You know, it's kind of almost on my bucket list, but not quite. It's one of those things I want to do. But honestly, I might be a little bit too afraid. I love researching scuba diving. I love watching scuba diving videos. I find it fascinating that we humans can go so deep into the ocean with just a tank of air on our back, right? I mean, humans, we're not designed for that. We're designed to live on the ground, live on dry land. But because God has given us just such ingenuity and allowed us to make so many incredible inventions, we're able to dive into the depths of the ocean and witness firsthand all the wonders that it has. We humans, we could go into places that we really aren't designed for. You know, the lowest a person has ever dived into the ocean with just scuba equipment is 332 meters. That's 1,000 feet. That is 0.2 of a mile. And it only took him 15 minutes to get that low, but then it took him 13 hours to get back up. And it took so long to get back up because he wanted to avoid decompression sickness. Because if you go too fast up, the nitrogen gases start to form bubbles in your bloodstream, and that's a life-threatening condition, you know. We're just not designed to go that low. We really aren't as humans. But God made us to live on land, and yet scuba divers, because of how wonderful and how amazing and the incredible sights, and because they're challenging themselves, they're always going deep into the ocean, into a world in which they were not designed for. When we talk about our world, can we all agree that this world is not what it's supposed to be? I feel like even non-Christians can agree with that, right? We all have this internal desire to want to live in paradise. We all have this internal desire to want to not suffer. We desire a world that doesn't exist, one without suffering, one without pain, one without injustice. And when you read the Bible, you can kind of start to understand that God had intended that for you. God wanted you to live in a world where you didn't suffer. He created at the very beginning. You open your Bible to the book of Genesis. What do you see? You see Adam and Eve in paradise with God. We have this internal desire for paradise. Why? Because God put it within us. But it's because of the sin that we've introduced into this world, because we messed up everything so that we're no longer in this paradise. When we see pain, death, suffering, trouble, hardship, injustice, remember, that's not what God intended for you. We suffer because of sin. Our world is full of sin. Adam and Eve sinned. They brought sin into the world, and guess what? Sin spread everywhere because everyone started partaking of it. Sin is more present than not. Sin is everywhere. All people have sinned ever since Adam and Eve, with only one exception. This world is full of sin. That is our mainstream culture. The world that is just the bad parts of humanity, right? We've gotten so bad that God can paint with a broad stroke and say, guess what? You shouldn't be friends with the world. It's like, well, what about the good parts of the world? No, God's like, no, just don't be friends with the world. Is there a good part of the world? Don't be friends with the world. The world is so bad. All the negative pieces of humanity, the culture of humanity, all of it is antagonistic toward God. And God says, time to pick a side. Are you a friend of God and an enemy of the world, or are you a friend of the world and an enemy of God? To be a friend of God is to be a friend of God and a friend of the world is adultery. You adulterous people. God says you are being unfaithful to me. You are cheating on me in this relationship. And God calls on His people to be separate. To even though they're part of this world, they are to be separate of that mainstream culture of sin that just infects humanity. They're to be separate from the rest of humanity. Even if everyone else behaves that way, we will not. Disciples of Jesus, we are set apart from the world. We are opting out. We are abstaining from what they are doing. Because those who call themselves Christians, we are supposed to reject everything that is contrary to God. And in our world, when you look at the activity of humanity, there's a lot of things that are contrary to God. John is going to say it this way, 1 John 2:15. Do not love the world or the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Again, what does he mean by world here? He's not talking about all creation. He's not talking about the physical earth. And I don't even think he's talking about the humanity, right? Because aren't we supposed to love people? Yeah. But he's saying don't love the world, don't love humanity. That's not what he's saying. He said don't love the activity of the world, the bad parts of the world, that mainstream culture of sin. God says don't love the sin. Don't love corruption. Don't love the things contrary to God. This is exactly what James said, right? James was just talking about friendship. John is talking about love. Don't be a friend with the world, and John is saying, don't love the world. James said, if you want to be a friend of the world, then you cannot be a friend of God. John is saying, you want to love the world, you cannot love God. Those are some strong words, aren't they? But in God's mind, there's this culture of sin. There's this ever-present influence of corruption where evil has spread to the point where you are going to have to abstain from it, to the point where you are going to be one of the few to step away. To the point where God can paint with a broad stroke and say the whole world is against God. That the world is incompatible with God. It is antagonistic to God. And you have to pick a side. See, John goes on to talk about the world. He says, for all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, and the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. This is what you're not supposed to love, right? We're talking about what are we not supposed to love? He said, don't love the world. What are we talking about? Don't love the desires of your flesh, the desires of your eyes, your pride in your life. You cannot love these things and God at the same time. That's what God says. You think you can, but you can't. If you're loving God and these things at the same time, God says that's not really loving me. And this is hard, right? Because we have flesh with desires. We have eyes. We have this desire to have a sense of accomplishment. But you got to take a side. And I think one of the things that we have to remember here was, what does it mean to love, right? What does it mean to love the world? What does it mean to love the desires of our flesh, the desires of our eyes, the pride of life? You know what? I think we love what we choose in life. I think that's what we love. We love what we do regularly. Because with maybe a couple of exceptions, right? Whatever you do, you love it, right? Whatever you do, you like it. You have the option to do one thing or another, whatever you choose, you like. If you watch TV in your spare time, you probably enjoy TV. If you drink Dr. Pepper, you probably love Dr. Pepper. You see, what you voluntarily choose is what you love. And I'm like, well, you go to work, maybe you hate your work. Well, you may hate your work, but you love the paycheck. Or you love your family that you're trying to pay for, or you love to have the opportunity to pay for your apartment or your house, right? What you choose is what you love. And God is, picking apart what is sin. Well, there's the desire of the flesh, or the desire of the eye, there's the pride of life, this unholy trinity of sin. Whatever the piece of sin we're talking about is, that's what you're supposed to stay away from. There's nothing wrong with loving fried chicken, right? There's nothing wrong with liking to look at a nice painting. There's nothing wrong with loving to win a competition, right? There's nothing wrong with some desires of flesh, some desires of eyes, and some sort of pride of life. But what John is talking about, what God is talking about, is the sinful pieces of this. He's talking about when you have crossed the line and you're starting to do things that God does not like. It may not be wrong to eat fried chicken, but it's wrong to eat fried chicken you stole. And it may not be wrong to look at a nice painting, but it is wrong to lustfully look at someone who's not your spouse. It may not be wrong to win a competition, but it is wrong to think that you have more value because of it. And that's the corruption of the world. These desires, and living after these desires, letting these desires be the guide of life, choosing to embrace these desires instead of being self-controlled and saying, no, I'm going to make sure that I don't follow the desires that God would not want me to. That's the culture of sin that God hates. That's the kind of lifestyle. And if you have that lifestyle, you cannot properly love God. Because God's love is exclusive. To love God requires you to not love certain other things. You cannot love the world and love God. You cannot be friends with the world and friends with God. just in the same way that light and darkness do not coexist. God is love. We are supposed to love. But we find out there are actually certain things that we're not supposed to love. To love God is to love what God loves. To love God is to hate what God hates. We love things that are good, things that are righteous. We hate things that are evil. We hate sin. Because all these things that God hates, you find out, they're just temporary. Because John goes on to say, the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. You know, those desires that we think are so important, those desires that sometimes that we get carried away with, that we forget, hey, I'm not supposed to follow these desires. Those desires are temporary. You might like fried chicken, but guess what? Fried chicken is temporary. This life in which you get to enjoy fried chicken, I know, afterwards let's all go to KFC. I know, I'm making you hungry. Right? The nice painting you get to look at, the TV show that you like to watch, the things that you like to look at, they're temporary. These accomplishments that you get when you are so prideful about, guess what? Those are temporary. Why would you get caught up in the temporary? Should we invest our time in something that is so temporary? This passage really shows you are as permanent as the things you love. You yourself, you are as permanent or temporary as the things you love. And so, if you love sin, you're going to end with sin. Sin's going to end. Jesus is going to come back, and there will be no more sin. When that happens, are you going to go away with it? But when you do the will of God, the will of God's never going to stop. God is always going to be. And if you love God and follow His will, you will always be. But to do the will of God, you have to control yourself, and you have to reject some desires. When you see something you want but you shouldn't have, when you yearn for something you want but you shouldn't have, when you want to think something but you shouldn't, you must choose to love God. That's how you love God. You love God by saying, my love for God is incompatible with this, and so I choose my love for God rather than this. It's not just saying, well, I'm not supposed to, so I'm not going to. Hey, if that's what it takes, you can think that. That is good to think. But I'll tell you what's even better, what's much more motivating, is for you to think that if I were to do that, it would go against my love for God, so I'm not going to do it. My love for God is greater than my desire to do that right there. To think that. To want to look at that. To want to experience that. I love God more. That's what it means to love God. Your love for God must eliminate your love for sin. Because when you let your love of God, love of the Father guide you, when you do the will of God, you live forever. Though you may die, you may still live. God is not bound by time, and whenever you are following His will and you have eternal life, guess what? Your life is not bound by time. It is constant. We have to abandon this world because this world, it is not ideal. It is corrupt. It is temporary. And I'll add one more thing. You know who's in control of this world? Satan. John says this in 1 John 5:18 and 19. We know that everyone who has been born of God does not keep on sinning. That's a pretty good verse. That's a verse to remember. Let me read that one more time. We know that everyone who has been born of God does not keep on sinning. There's some power there. But he who is born of God protects him, and the evil one does not touch him. Verse 19. We know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. See, contrary to popular belief, Satan is not the ruler of hell. Satan is going to be a victim in hell. Hell was created for Satan. But until he gets to hell, Satan has a lot of power and authority right here, right now. Because if you think about it, if this world is filled with sin, isn't that proof that Satan has a lot of power here? Isn't sin a tool of the devil? The devil holds the greatest amount of influence over this temporary, corrupt world. And John says it so powerfully here. The whole world lies in the power of the evil one. In fact, the Bible, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, says, Satan is the god of this world. Little g, god of this world. Because Satan is the major influence on the ideals, the opinions, the goals, the views. That's why this world is so unideal. That's why it's so corrupt. Because Satan is in control here. He is influencing it so heavily. And this isn't to say that God isn't in control, but it's saying that God allows Satan to have such incredible influence to let us, humanity, pick a choice between between God and Satan. And so often we choose Satan over God. Satan is the ruler of this world, meaning he has a heavy amount of power and authority. But one of the greatest things to know is that Satan is limited by God because God has more power and authority. Despite Satan's power over this world, God rescues us from this world. And while we're still in this world, we are no longer under the power of Satan. Colossians tells us that God has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of His beloved Son. That when you are saved, that whenever you are forgiven of sin, Satan doesn't have a power over you. Why? Because Satan's power lies in sin and death. Those are his tools. And so when God forgives your sin and removes the possibility of death, temporary death, which is no longer death, really, He removes the power of sin, He removes the power of death. Guess what? He removes the power of the devil. And so Satan can't touch you. Satan cannot take away your salvation. The only thing he can do is to convince you to give it up. That's why he cannot forcefully rip your salvation away from you. All he can do is say, doesn't this look nice? That's his tool. He can convince you to stray from God. And that's why we are protected. Because even though we live in Satan's world, we do not have to follow his will. Because even though we live in a world of sin, God forgives us of our sin. Even though our world is plagued by death, God gives us life. You see, we live in a world that we are not designed for. We are venturing into a world that is not our own. We're designed for paradise. God planned for us to be in the Garden of Eden. God planned for us to be in paradise forever. To be in a world where there really wasn't that much suffering, that much hardship, to not have any pain. That's what God wanted of us. But sin came into the picture. We find ourselves now in a world of darkness, in a world of sin, in a world of corruption. We're just swimming in an ocean of sin. We're trying to maintain our separation from sin. We're not designed for this world. We're trying to keep the sin from just overtaking us. And with God's protection, we're trying to navigate ourselves in this world of sin while staying away from the sin. We're trying to navigate ourselves in a world that isn't ours. Like a scuba diver who goes into the depths of the ocean, tries to navigate. He doesn't belong to the world. And he keeps a part of the world he belongs to on his back. And he makes sure that the waters don't overtake him. He keeps a separation. He keeps his suit on. He keeps breathing the air on his back. And even though he's deep into the trenches, he knows he doesn't belong there. And it's interesting because in those depths of the ocean, light doesn't reach at a certain point. It's nothing but darkness and whatever flashlight you have. And in that water, you really don't have that sense of gravity. You become so disoriented so easily. Imagine just being in the heavy darkness with nothing but a light on your head, air at your mouth, and you don't know which way is up. And this is a common thing for beginners in scuba diving, I have learned, that sometimes they can be swimming in a direction that they think is up, but they're just going deeper into the water. That sounds like a nightmare. And so they teach this trick to scuba divers. There's one way to always know which way is up. They take out their air for just 1 second, and they blow. And they watch which direction the bubbles go. The bubbles always go up. And so if they blow out and the bubbles are going this way, guess what? Up is that way. You're sideways, right? If the bubbles go down, guess what? You're upside down. They orient themselves by the direction of whichever way is up. And I think that's a good lesson for us. We orient ourselves by whichever way is up. We orient ourselves by whichever way God points. Because in this underwater world of sin, it's easy to get disoriented. But we have to remember, we always have to go up. And even though we're in this world temporarily, we know we don't belong here, and we know that safe haven, that refuge, that safety is towards God. The will of God always points up. The will of God, which we find in God's Word. The will of God, which we don't find out in the world. The will of God, which we know is not sin and darkness. The desires of our flesh, what you want to experience, the desires of your eyes, what you want to see, the pride of life, the desire to be better than others, those things point down. We are not designed for this world, but we live in it. And as we live in it, we have to always remember which way is up. We have to always remember this is not our home. We can't get comfortable. Have we gotten too comfortable in this world? Have we gotten to the point where all the events of this world are starting to worry us? You guys know what I'm talking about. We live in a crazy time right now. Are we caught up in it? Are we looking up? Have we fallen in love with this present world? Have we taken on their problems to be our problems? Are we keeping ourselves separate from this mainstream culture of sin? Are we following our desires, or are we following our love for God? Are we being a friend of the world, or are we being a friend of God? Because God says you have to pick a side. And if someone were to judge you based upon your actions, or let's say your actions and your thoughts, which side would they say you've picked? Are you living by sin, or are you living by the will of God? Have you made this world your home? Because I can tell you, this world is not what it's supposed to be. This world is corrupt. It is filled with sin. This world is temporary. And if this world is your home, you're temporary with it. This world, you don't want it to be your home because it's ruled by Satan, who hates you. But God loves you, and you should love God. This world is not your home. Therefore, don't love the world. Therefore, do the will of God. Therefore, remember, whoever has been born of God does not keep on sinning. This morning, are you in the depths of this world and are you disoriented? Do you feel like you've forgotten which way is up? Do you need some help in figuring out which way is up? Do you need some help reorienting yourself to get to the point where you can love God, where you can follow the will of God? That's why you have brothers and sisters. As we all swim in the depths, let's all keep each other safe as we remember which way is up. The invitation is going to be for you. The elders are going to be in the back, and I'm going to be right here in the front. Come forward as we stand and sing.